Welcome to Speaking of Grace, the weekly message podcast from the Whole Life Church in Orlando, Florida. We're a multi-ethnic, multicultural, and multi-generational congregation committed to our mission of loving people into a lifelong friendship with God. We are committed to our vision of being a church without walls, fully engaged in serving the people of our community. Thank you for joining us as we continue Speaking of Grace.
Happy Valentine's Day, family. Yeah, isn't it fun that Valentine's Day is on a Sabbath? I think it's fantastic. And I just have to start off by saying, while Albert's still up here, Albert's wife, Allie, is sitting right here. Is he taking care of you for Valentine's Day? He did. Okay, just checking in, okay? That's good. So kudos to you. Well done. No, you won't. That's okay. He's saying they're going to ask Rochelle. So Rochelle and I have a kind of a standing tradition that we don't celebrate Valentine's Day on Valentine's Day because we don't like the crowds. We're both kind of introverts. So we wait a day or two later, and then we celebrate. And since it's today and, you know, I've got a lot of stuff happening on Sabbath, we'll be celebrating tomorrow. So there we go. I got that one out of the way, Albert, but that was a fair fire back there. So speaking of picking on bosses, my boss is sitting on the front row right here. Brad, I don't know, maybe this is dangerous for me to ask. You got things squared away for Valentine's Day, everything? Yeah, for the most part, you know. I'm going to go ahead and leave it right there. I think I have pushed my luck as far as I want to do it for one morning. But Brad, I'm assuming you know the history of Valentine's Day, right? No? Not all of it. Some of it. Like, what percentage would you say that you know about Valentine's Day? Cupid. Okay. Excellent. Well done, sir. You are doing very well. Everybody know the history of Valentine's Day? I mean, you're celebrating it today, so you know that. So if I called you up here, you would be happy to share that with us. What you know about it, sure. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, Jack. You're going to hold me accountable. I'm going to tell you a version of the story of Valentine's Day, the history of it. Just so you know, I feel like if you're going to celebrate a day, you kind of ought to know a little bit about it, right? So let's talk about it for just a second. So Valentine's Day probably has its origins in a very ancient festival in Rome called Lupercalia, and it was a festival. And I got to be careful because I promised I was going to keep this church service between G and PG rated. All right, but it was an ancient Roman festival that celebrated the god of fertility and husbandry, the protector of the herds and crops. And it was celebrated on February 15. And one of the interesting little traditions on this Roman holiday is that young men, young ladies would put their names into a urn, I guess, and they would then draw out a name, and that was who that they were paired with for the remainder of the year. So that's, anyway, like I said, so that's some of the origins of that. And along comes Christianity, and they said, no, we can't have anything to do with that. Kind of like some of you who grew up as Seventh-day Adventists in the church, you know you're not only supposed to go up to your ankles. If it's above the shin, it's a sin, right? If in the water, like that kind of thing. So, however, you would find ways to baptize certain activities. You know, there were certain games that if you could add a Bible verse to them, they suddenly became a Sabbath-appropriate activity, right? If you can do that. And so Christianity comes along and says, we kind of like this idea of love. We kind of like that celebration of this, but this whole Roman pagan thing, we've got to figure out a way to kind of make it, you know, we got to Christianize it. And so out of this comes some would say it's a true story. Some might say it's legend. And perhaps there's a little bit of truth and, you know, a little bit of addition to this story, but what would come out of the Christian church would come to say that there was a priest in the 3rd century whose name was Valentine. If you look historically, there's at least 3 different Valentine priests. So which one? We're just going to go with the official story, okay? So there was a priest named Valentine, and Valentine lived during the rule of this magnificent man, Emperor Claudius. And Claudius was a big proponent of war. He was a big proponent of Roman expansion. And he had a real problem because he felt like he wasn't getting enough recruits. And he felt like the recruits he got were just not locked in enough. And one of the reasons he blamed that on was that if you're in love or if you're married, you're not going to want to go give your life willingly for Rome. You know, if you have something, if you die and your family's going to starve because you die, you might not be as willing to do the charge when it comes time. So Claudius banned marriage for young men between certain ages. Said no marriages. Valentine did not like that. Valentine said, that's not right. You can't do that. Firstly, war's not a good thing. Secondly, you know, people have a right to be in love. They have a right to get married. And so he performed marriages for young men who weren't supposed to be getting married. He would do the weddings. Well, this obviously ticked off Claudius. He was like, you can't ignore me. I am the emperor. You will do what I tell you to do. And Valentine said, I am sorry. I serve a higher authority than you. I'm a Christian, and so I'm not going to listen to you. I'm just going to keep doing these weddings. And Claudius says, well, that's fine. And I'm going to go ahead and throw you in prison. And so Valentine gets thrown into prison, as the story goes. And while he's in prison, he meets the lovely daughter of the jailer. And they fall in love. Now, the jailer's daughter is blind, and neither she nor the jailer are Christians. And so Valentine performs a miracle, according to the story, and restores this young lady's sight, whereupon she and her father both become Christians, according to the story. However, Claudius is still unhappy with Valentine because when he shows up to question Valentine, Valentine tries to convert him, which he wasn't in the mood to be converted. He wanted Claudius just to quit doing the weddings and let his men go fight the wars that he wanted him to go fight. And so Claudius decrees that Valentine is to be executed. And the night before he's executed, Valentine writes this beautiful, beautiful love letter to the love of his life, the young lady whose vision he had performed a miracle to restore. And he finished the letter by signing it, your Valentine. Yes. And then he's executed the next day. So, happy Valentine's. So the Christian church takes this and they change Valentine's Day. By the way, Lupercalia was on February 15. The church puts it on February 14, and they call it Valentine's Day. It's a celebration of romantic love, and that's what happens. Along comes this new upstart country called the United States of America, and a lady named Esther Howland comes along. And in 1847, Esther received a card with beautiful lace on it, a Valentine card from England. And England was producing these, and she receives this card, and she thinks, I can do that better and cheaper. Her dad owned a stationery store. For those of you who don't know what stationery is, because you grew up in the digital age, it's paper that's pretty, okay? And so people used to write on this. It's an incredible thing. And so her dad owned one of those stores. And so she convinces her dad to help her start a business mass producing Valentine's Day cards, these beautiful Valentine cards. So really the greeting card industry that I think takes in about, let's see, how many $billion? Let me see, I did my research here. They take in about $7.5 billion last year, the greeting card industry, of which, by the way, Over 1 billion of that is in Valentine's Day cards. You have Esther Howland to thank for that, because Esther came along and she created a mostly female business, an entirely female-run business. And before Henry Ford had the manufacturing line, she created a manufacturing line for greeting cards. And so you can see a sketch of what it kind of looked like. The women would mass produce these cards. They could do it efficiently. And she is credited as the mother of Valentine's Day for the United States because she promoted it, she worked it. Now, there's a few of you here today who showed up and you're like, I don't like Valentine's Day. I'm not getting a Valentine's card today. Ain't nobody out there that loved me. Hey, seriously, if it makes you feel better, Esther Howland never got married. So the woman who popularized Valentine's Day cards in the United States probably didn't get a whole lot of them herself. And so that's the rest of that particular story. And so that's where Valentine's has come from. And today it's a celebration of romantic love and in the United States. And so for some it can be a very happy day. For some it can be a very difficult day. But that's where it comes from. And so I want to be talking to you for the next 4 weeks, including today, about the greatest of these. In 1 Corinthians 13, the Bible says that love is the greatest of these. But the Bible wasn't written in English. It was written in Greek. And Greek is very specific with the kinds of love. What do I mean by that? Well, I love my wife. I love my kids. I love my parents. I love my brother. I love our pets. I love pizza. And we hope there's a distinction between all those things. And the Greeks and the Romans had a distinction. Instead of just having one word for love, they had 4 main words for love. And they exemplified different parts of what love can be. And what we celebrate on Valentine's Day is this particular word, Eros. It refers to a specific type of love, one characterized by passion, intense desire, and aesthetic appreciation. So this kind of love isn't just related just to human beings. It can be the love of art, the appreciation for a beautiful painting or sculpture or whatever. Or maybe in our modern time, like the appreciation for an amazing movie that really moves you. And so Eros is this intense, passionate love for beauty. And we're going to talk about it a little bit more. We're going to kind of talk about it a little bit more. But what becomes interesting about Eros is that in the New Testament, which is written in Greek, it is mentioned exactly 0 times. Not at all. The Bible never uses that word. It uses the other 3, one a lot, one somewhat, and one only once, and this one, 0. So if you're like me, the question that might come into your mind, does that mean that God doesn't like Eros? Is God against this kind of love? Because it never shows up in the New Testament. And this is a debate that theologians have had for as long as there have been Christian theologians. And I want you to know that the consensus generally among Christian theologians is that it isn't that God is against it. But the problem with Eros is that it's not bad, but it's often misdirected by sinful people. And so maybe that's why it's not really included in the New Testament. And maybe that's it, because it isn't necessarily bad, but it can be misdirected. One of my favorite authors, a guy named C.S. Lewis, actually makes an argument in his book, The Four Loves. And in the Four Loves, he's talking about these 4 Greek words for love. And when he's talking about Eros, one of the arguments he makes is that Eros in marriage is a shadow of a higher reality. And so C.S. Lewis actually argues Eros is a good thing in its proper context, because what it replicates is the love God wants us to have for him, that burning, passionate, intense desire and love for God. And importantly, it's God's intense, passionate love for us. But this word is a shadow of the reality. Another really great theologian by the name of Anders Nygren, he's a Swedish theologian, Lutheran theologian, talks about a couple things that you need to kind of think about when it comes to Eros. He starts off by saying that Eros is driven by the worth of the object. In other words, the whole idea behind this idea of Eros love is that it is what makes something worthy of love is its worth. Just to kind of, what do I mean by that? So if it's beautiful, it's worthy of love. If it's not beautiful or aesthetically beautiful, it's not as worthy of love in Eros. And so Eros is driven by the worth of the object being loved. You see where that can be a little bit problematic? And family, can we just stop and have a little bit of real talk for a second? In the culture that we live in here in the United States, a lot of the love that we talk about, and I think that Americans put a high value on, is this Eros kind of love. As long as you're beautiful, as long as you're making me happy, as long as, then you are worthy of my love. Because Eros puts the emphasis on the other's worthiness. It desires to possess. It says, Eros is this intense, I have to have this. I mean, think about the first time you met a special person and you thought, oh, yes, I need to go out on a date with this person. Aubrey, I feel like I need to call you up to tell a personal story. Audrey, I just know you laughed and I just felt, yeah. I'm very interactive today, by the way, so watch out what you do. I'm feeling very, very interactive. But this Eros wants to possess. It has a need to have something. It's also characterized that it is based on human effort. In other words, you need to be worthy. It's effort-based. Do you see that in our society? Do you see it in the advertising, the stories that we're being told by people who want us to buy things? You need to possess this. This is beautiful. And because it's this, it's worthy of that. We see it a lot in our society when it comes to the way that marriages are portrayed. As long as you're fulfilling my needs and my desire, you are worthy of my love. But when you stop doing that, then I have a right to not love you anymore. And family, the problem with that is that I would suggest that if you think about this long and hard, every single one of us wants to be loved not for what's best about us, but in spite of what's worst about us. I know that's the longing of my heart. The longing of my heart is not to be loved because I earned it, but in spite of the ways that I failed to deserve it. And if that's the kind of love that I want, is that the kind of love I'm willing to give? Again, Eros isn't bad. I would describe it as kind of the coals that start a fire. You know, it's a good thing that there's things that attract us to people. Just like it's a good thing to be able to start a fire, to have a fire starter. That's a good thing. But the question is, what happens to the fire afterwards? because I could tell you some really boring chemistry details about your brain and the way that Eros works in your brain, but it's basically just a bunch of chemicals firing off. And this early stage of love is just a drug addiction that your brain has. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm really being a downer on Valentine's Day, aren't I? Okay. But the problem is, like many addicts, we start chasing the addiction. We want a bigger high and a bigger high rather than saying, that's not what really matters. And that's something we have to think about. So I told you the Bible doesn't talk about Eros, but I would suggest to you that there are several places in the Bible that reflect Eros. So I'd like to take a look at a couple of them and see some of the neat things that are there about Eros. Let's talk about a guy named Rachel and a guy named Jacob and a lady named Rachel. So Jacob and Rachel are in the Old Testament. Their story is there in Genesis. And Jacob is one of the patriarchs in the Bible. And Jacob is not the most great of people. His name literally means deceiver. And he's really good at it. He tricks his dad into getting the birthright, stealing it from his brother. His older brother's not happy about it. His older brother threatens to kill him, so Jacob has to leave home. He runs away. He goes to where his family originated from. And when he gets there, he sees this beautiful young lady taking care of some sheep, and he immediately feels Eros. He's immediately attracted. This lady's name is Rachel. And Rachel's, and by the way, just in full disclosure, Rachel's his cousin. This is a different time and different place. Let's not get caught up on that one, okay? But he falls for her. And eventually he says to her dad, Laban, he says, what would it take for me to be able to marry your daughter? And Laban says, awesome. Love to have you for a son-in-law. All you have to do is work for 7 years for me. Now, for those of us out there, 7 years, that's not a short period of time. You know, not a short period of time. But the Bible records that because of, and I'm adding this word in, because of Jacob's Eros, because he's so head over heels, because of the passion, the desire he feels for her, it feels like just a day. Now, this story gets more messed up, but that's not the point, okay? For those of you who know it, just kind of put it on the side. That's not the point. The point is, in this story that I'm wanting to make here, is that Eros is a motivation. It causes Jacob to be willing to work for 7 years because it's worth it for him. The years of labor just felt like days, went by so quick. And so this kind of love isn't bad. It can prove to be a motivating factor. It can want us to look for beauty and to seek it out and do that sort of thing. And so in this story, Jacob's Eros isn't a bad thing. It's what starts a relationship. Then there is Song of Solomon. I'm not going to get into this book with you, but let me tell you what. If you can read the original language that it was written in, it is not something I can preach on in church. I know you'll read it in English and you'll say, come on, Ken, it's pretty tame. Not in the original language, it's not. The people who translate your Bible are being kind to the children that may wind up reading the Bible. It is very graphic and very descriptive, and it is totally a celebration of young love, of Eros. And theologians will tell you, and by the way, I have heard from my friends in the Jewish community that many Jewish people consider the Song of Solomon to be the most sacred of the books in the Old Testament, because it is, in their mind, a book that describes and is a metaphor for the passion as a gift from God and God's passion for his people. That's described as this young love, these two people falling in love with each other and being crazy about each other. So again, Eros is a celebration. Then there's David and Bathsheba. Remember I told you sparks are a good thing. They can start a fire. And in a fireplace, those sparks are a really great thing. They'll keep the house warm. When it's contained and it's the way it's supposed to be, it's wonderful. But what happens if you take those same sparks and put them in the living room on the carpet? they'll burn the house down. And that's what happened in the story of David and Bathsheba. David allowed his Eros to be the sparks on the living room carpet and literally burned his house down because he saw a woman that did not belong to him, belonged to somebody else. Instead of caring about what was best for her, what was best for her husband, he let Eros tell him, this is an object I must have. Family, let's be clear about something too for just a second. I think sometimes we can get confused. Attraction is not the same thing as lust. Seeing somebody beautiful, seeing somebody attractive is not wrong unless you let it start to consume you. In fact, C.S. Lewis said that the difference, that Eros is not the same as lust. He called lust Venus. That's what he described it as. And so in this kind of situation with David started to objectify, and that is the problem with Eros, and the problem that we can have when we don't do it correctly, when we don't contain it, when we let it get out of control, is that we allow it to put us to where we objectify human beings. They become an object for our use and for what we want, rather than being the God-given, God-created human beings that we need to think about what's best for them, what's best for the other. Just because two people are willing doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt a community around them. And so that's one of the things that we have to think about when it comes to this Eros. It can be very destructive when it's taken rather than honored. Do you see the difference? When you take something, you're objectifying it. There's another thing when you honor what you find attractive and beautiful. And sometimes that honor is not picking the flower. It's leaving it there to be enjoyed by others. Finally, there's the story of Ruth and Boaz. I'm not going to go too far down this road. There's a whole series I did on it not too long ago. Go back and watch it. But a beautiful story in the Bible where Eros acts as redemption. Two people are both attracted. Ruth and Boaz are attracted to each other. By the way, Ruth dresses up. She puts on perfume. She looks her best. There's nothing wrong with that. And they're attracted to each other. And in this case, it's a noble attraction that builds a lineage that eventually leads to Jesus. So what am I trying to tell you today? One of the things that I want to talk to you extensively about over these next 4 weeks is that love is all about choice. And when it comes to Eros, we get to choose whether we want to contain it or whether we just want it to run wild in our life. And just like fire, when you let it run wild, it can do a lot of damage. But just like fire, when you contain it and use it properly, it can create enormous value. And the choice is yours. There are those who say, I can't control myself. To those people, we say, please do. When you're angry at me, I want you to control yourself and not punch me in the face. When you want the car that I drive, I don't want you to steal it. Be in control. The Bible says this in 1 Peter, don't be concerned about the outward beauty of fancy hairstyles, expensive jewelry, or beautiful clothes. By the way, hear what it's saying. It says don't be concerned about it. So it doesn't say that there's something wrong with making yourself look nice. It's just saying don't let that be your biggest priority. You should clothe yourselves instead with the beauty that comes from within. Another way of saying this is from the Old Testament in 1 Samuel. The Lord said to Samuel, don't judge by the appearance or height, for I have rejected him. The Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Family, one of the things I know after 27 years of marriage is I'm in love with my wife today. And that love has grown and matured into something that is different than it was at the very beginning. And that's not a bad thing. It's a different thing. A lot of people want to chase that initial drug addict thing in the brain. And I'm not downing that. That's their God-given for a purpose. But what I would say to you is, Eros is not the greatest of these.
Hi, this is Randy McGray, podcast producer and host here at Whole Life Church. Loving people into a lifelong friendship with God is our mission at the Whole Life Church, and our podcasts are designed to help facilitate conversations that help us grow together in that pursuit. Now that you've heard the message for this week, don't forget to check out the Whole Life takeaways for this message. Swipe up in today's show notes and join the conversation. Speaking of conversations, each Wednesday morning we take a closer look at the week's message. That's right, the one you just listened to. We discuss practical ways to apply spiritual lessons and ask honest questions about the issues we face as Christians, all focused through the lens of grace. Your voice is a welcomed addition to that conversation. We encourage your thoughts and your questions by sending a voicemail or text to 407-965-1607 or send an email to podcast@wholelife.church. You can find everything podcast related on our website, wholelife.church/podcast. And plan on spending every Tuesday evening and Wednesday morning with us as we bring you the Whole Life Church inspiration you love straight into your headphones. Thanks for listening and have a great week.